All we've got to do now is to start pumping.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I am your host, Marcus Whitman. We have a loaded show today, so buckle in. We're going to be recapping Monday Night Football, making my power rankings adjustment from that Chiefs-Giants game, as well as the Derrick Henry injury. Talk a little bit about Von Miller as well, so some more power rankings talk there. Then we're going to get into the game recap, another wild slate of games this weekend. And then going to be doing kind of a mid-season predictions review style deal where we take a look at every team's projection forward and how I think the second half of this season plays out. So that will be fun. And then we're going to do awards as well and the mailbag. So lots of great stuff here in the show today. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do hit that like button. Also, if you're listening to the audio version, wherever you get your podcasts, do consider leaving a review. I really appreciate you in advance. And just some news and notes here from my channel's perspective. We are not going to have studs and duds this week. I'm actually heading down to Illinois for some family time later on this week, so not going to have time to get that done. Definitely need some time to just kind of breathe away from the internet a little bit. I think anybody that works in a job like this that's dealing with the internet and people on it on a day-to-day basis, you see a lot of negativity, and it does take its toll, but I want to thank every one of you that enjoys hearing me talk about football, likes my content, and of course my Patreon supporters as well. You guys keep me going and let me block out the haters. So I did want to take a moment to just thank you guys for watching and soaking up the content. And then, of course, this show is brought to you by my Patreon. That is patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy, where you can support this show. You'll gain access to the mailbag that we answer every question at the end of the show. And you also get exclusive content. I have plans for a Dak Prescott film breakdown. That's a quarterback that I suppose, lower on. I think Cowboys fans are just crazy high on him, but get to kind of do a film review, talk about what I see when I watch Dak Prescott. Going to be over there on Patreon. And lastly, before we get into this banger of a show, I was watching Sunday Night Football, and I think I saw a tweet that this was like the first night that they have 5 pro leagues going. It was baseball, basketball, hockey, football, and I think it was MLS was the other one. And I'm like, I should remind people that they can save money if they're going to tickets or if they're buying tickets to go to these games by using promo code FranchiseGuy on SeatGeek. SeatGeek is awesome, man. I always find the best prices there. I'm not just making that up. I bought all of my, I have 5 straight NFL games this year. All 5 of those tickets I bought on SeatGeek. Great app and customer service, you name it. Best ticket app, in my opinion. Use promo code FranchiseGuy if you're buying tickets to games or concerts, whatever it may be. You'll save $20, and you're going to support my channel in the process, so go and check that out. Okay, I appreciate you for sticking with me. We are now going to get into about 2 hours of football here, so let's go, starting with the Monday Night Football action between the Chiefs and the Giants. And, from the Giants' perspective, I want to get that out of the way because I have a lot more to say about the Chiefs. Giants played a good game. They are not really in the Chiefs class, in my opinion. They just don't have the offensive firepower, and frankly, they just don't have the star talent on defense. I do think the good coaching from Patrick Graham showed up. They came in with a good game plan, and it just wasn't enough, and Daniel Jones is a part of that. They're kind of in this weird spot because, on one hand, they suck. On the other hand, Daniel Jones has played good enough to be their starter heading into next year, especially when you look at this quarterback class at this point in time, not looking like you're going to get a sure upgrade over Daniel Jones. So it's yeah, we kind of know Jones isn't the future necessarily, or at least isn't going to give us the brightest future, but what else are we going to do? And his contract is looming. It's just a situational mess for the Giants, which is definitely, at least if I was a Giants fan, would be very frustrating. So, the Giants are kind of in this weird spot, and they're just not a very good football team. And they have a lot of stuff to work on that we've detailed in depth over the last couple of months. But when I look at the Chiefs, it's been a very weird season, and they have absolutely burned me over the last month. I keep picking them. I keep betting on them. I've kept putting them in the Super Bowl conversations because I just felt like we have 3 years of sample size. More often than not, if you have all of that information to draw from that says Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, Andy Reid's a great play caller, Kelsey and Tyreek Hill is the best playmaking duo in the NFL. We've had multiple years now of this defense showing that they can get better as the season goes on and putting certain things together to get more out of less. We've got a large sample size of the Chiefs doing that. And more often than not, you can draw on that and it'll play out in time. But now we're in this weird stage of if and when that's actually going to happen. And we're getting week by week sample sizes that says, I don't know. I don't think we can be sure of that. Now, they're benefited because the rest of the AFC is kind of a mess right now. Derrick Henry just went down for the Titans. The Browns are falling apart. The Chargers aren't playing well. So at least there's that for the Chiefs. But, man, it's to the point where I'm doubting them more and more and more every single week. They have so many issues going on that go beyond the turnover thing, right? Because even today, I will sit here and say their turnover luck is going to get better. I mean, it just is. Like, that's the one thing that over time always comes back to the middle is turnovers. Now, of course, Mahomes' play style is going to lead to a few more turnovers than maybe some other teams. But some of the crazy amounts of turnovers that are happening here, it's balls getting deflected right up in the air. It's a large amount of fumbles by players that don't normally fumble, guys like Kelsey. So that stuff's going to come back to the normal. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. Again, Mahomes is going to throw some picks. It's his play style. But it's now collecting more and more information about a lot of other stuff that's very concerning for me for the Chiefs, and it surfaced again in that Giants game. Number one is the offense is not just fixing the turnovers away from getting back to being an elite offense, which the other problem we're going to talk about is how bad this defense is, and if the Chiefs are going to get back into the Super Bowl conversation, they do have to have a top 2 or 3 offense in the NFL. So it's not just, okay, they got to stop fumbling and having incomplete passes getting shot up in the air and intercepted. No, it goes well beyond that. Teams are showing, and the Giants showed this last night, the Titans certainly showed it last week, that Patrick Mahomes is concerningly impatient. If you run these quarters coverages too high, you back off and force Mahomes to take the easy stuff and play patient football. He really struggles at that. And it's not that he can't do it, right? We saw it in this game, especially early on. They said, okay, you're going to back off. Like, it's crazy how much the Giants were backing off last night. You just look around the line of scrimmage, there was nobody to be found. So they did. They said, okay, we'll hit quick outs, we'll do these rollouts and hit throws down the sideline, we'll run the ball effectively, which they were certainly able to do. But eventually, Mahomes got impatient, and he started bailing from clean pockets. He started trying to push the ball downfield. And that works when you're playing Daniel Jones and the Giants, and you can escape at the end of the game by a field goal. But that's not what the expectations are for the Chiefs, is to beat the Giants by 3 at home. So they have some serious issues on offense. And they're going to fix some of it, but I don't know how much they can fix. And that's when you look at the defense and say, man, this is a train wreck. I mean, there's so many frustrating personnel decisions that this team is making or not making that I think are putting this defense in an even more compromising situation. It starts in the back end. I think you can confidently say that Daniel Sorensen has been the single worst player in the National Football League this year. Liability in coverage, that would be putting it lightly. He can't track the ball. He hasn't been a great run defender. He's out of position. It's been a mess. And I don't know why they don't go to Juan Thornhill more often. Very frustrating there. We got to see a little bit better defense this week. They had to play Willie Gay because Anthony Hitchens is out. Willie Gay gets an interception that was pretty easy, but that's a play that I don't think Anthony Hitchens makes because he doesn't have an instinctive coverage bone in his body. Willie Gay does. They can't take him off the field. Willie Gay is clearly their best linebacker, and they've been stubborn to not play him. Chris Jones is another questionable personnel decision. They kick him outside to the edge because they felt like they had this super talented interior defensive line, and that couldn't have been more of a disaster. Chris Jones just wasn't the same on the edge. A big part of that is he's not an edge player. He plays on the inside for a reason. He's not a 4.6 speed guy, right? You put him inside, all of a sudden he gets after the quarterback a little better. And now they go and get a Melvin Ingram. There's pieces that I think can still salvage the Chiefs' season, but it's week after week after week where they're not doing the right things. And it's both sides of the ball. So that takes me to the power rankings adjustments here. And honestly, no movement from the Chiefs and the Giants. I don't think the Chiefs played enough to impress me enough to raise them. And frankly, they would have dropped if it were not for the Tennessee Titans having Derrick Henry get injured, which I think is a big blow to the Titans' upside as a team. And that actually pushes them, for me, into that, what is that? 1, 2, 3, fourth tier of teams that are playoff contenders, but really not teams I can picture winning a Super Bowl. I can't see the Chiefs winning a Super Bowl at all without Derrick Henry. This next tier with the Bengals, the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Raiders, they're going to have to basically get really lucky and show some more than they have to do it, but I can at least see a world where that happens. I can't really see that with the Tennessee Titans right now. So the Titans are going to drop down 4. The Chiefs are going to stay put at 9. The Bengals and Chargers are going to benefit from that Titans drop, moving up 2 spots. And then the Raiders are going to jump the Kansas City Chiefs because of the Derrick Henry injury and because the Chiefs, to me, did not look good on Monday Night Football. I think the Raiders, as we sit here today, have a better defense, surely, and they have, at this point in time, a more consistent offense. Now, is that going to hold up as we move forward? We'll see. Henry Ruggs, by the way, got in a serious car crash this morning. Not going to know how that impacts the Raiders' offense or how long he's going to be out as of this recording. So that could be swaying back towards the Chiefs' benefit here. But right now, the Raiders are the best team in the AFC West. And I also have now a lone Ravens team in my tier 2 because I don't think the Ravens are in the same conversation with those top 6 teams, the Rams, the Bucks, the Packers, the Bills, the Cardinals, and the Cowboys. But I also think they're more reliable and more consistent than the other teams here. So those are the power rankings adjustments. I said I was going to be talking about that here on the podcast on yesterday's power rankings, so there you go. And now I want to talk a little bit more about the games that we saw from Week 8. And I'm going to start with the Thursday Night Football game between the Green Bay Packers and the Arizona Cardinals. This was a huge statement win for the Green Bay Packers. To do what they've done really this whole season, which is play a winning, complete brand of football. Defense, run game, quarterback play, you name it. But to do that against a undefeated Cardinals team on the road without your number 1 receiver in Davante Adams. Everyone says, this offense is overly reliant on that Rodgers to Adams connection. And surely it was for the passing game, but they showed that they can still score in other ways, and Rodgers can still make those big plays in those little moments when they need him to. But for me, this was a complete team win for the Green Bay Packers, and it was a very, I would say, Belichickian, Tom Brady-esque week for the Green Bay Packers. You look back to those dominant Patriots teams, the teams that won 6 Super Bowls, what made them so special and so unique was not that they always won in these blowout games, but they were so diversified in how they could beat you. And they were so good at identifying matchups knowing their strengths, recognizing your opponent's weaknesses, putting together the right game plan, and going out and executing. Those are the culture, schematic, coaching aspects of team football that often get overlooked. And I think that's an area of the Arizona Cardinals team that's really lacking. They have all this explosiveness, this talent, but it doesn't always all come together. And for the Packers, it did. They looked at this matchup. They said, look, we don't have any receivers. Not just that Davante Adams is out, but we don't have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who wasn't able to come off IR. We don't have Allen Lazard, who's a quality possession receiver on the outside. And really all they had was Randall Cobb and Amari Rodgers, who hasn't really shown anything yet, and Juwan Winfrey, who they had to call up off the practice squad. That's not a serviceable group of receivers, right? So they said, you know what we do have is we have a mauling offensive line that's extremely well coached. We have two outstanding running backs, currently the best running back duo in the NFL with the injuries in Cleveland, in my opinion. And we have a quarterback that'll take care of the football, that can kind of move around the offense pre-snap, basically get out there and read the alignment of the defense and either change the side of the run or use his rapid release to hit these quick bubble screens to guys like Cobb and Amari Rodgers, who are good with the ball in their hands or in the quick game. And we're basically just going to methodically annoy and physically beat up this Cardinals defense that just lost J.J. Watt and is a little squishy up front. You know, they got a safety at linebacker in Isaiah Simmons and a defensive line that's a little bit undersized and squishy with J.J. Watt out. So they went at they totally recognized the matchup that they had and came out with a team win. And the other thing that really impressed me about Green Bay was their defense stepping up without their defensive coordinator out there, which I think is overstated, but it's still cool and shows the kind of culture and identity of this team. This defense played really, really good football. The contain on Kyler Murray was some of the best we've seen from anybody this season, and that's not easy to do, man. Containing Kyler Murray is probably the hardest job in the NFL for a defensive end or an edge player. And Rashawn Gary, Whitney Mercilus came in this game, which was huge, and Kenny Clark got that interior pressure. Dean Lowry played good, and they dominated the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the ball. Devondre Campbell continues to play well. And then they kind of had this keep a blanket over the offense, modern style of defense, where they didn't give up a lot of big plays. And it was a good approach on defense, just good overall execution. They recognized where they could have their advantages, and they took advantage. And that is a huge deal for Green Bay, who now is kind of just getting their season started. They get, heading into next week against the Kansas City Chiefs, they get Davante Adams back, they get Allen Lazard back, they get Marquez Valdes-Scantling back. That is their entire receiving core right there. Those are their three starters. You got Randall Cobb as your fourth. You get David Bakhtiari back, the probably second best left tackle in football with the way that Trent Williams has played since he became a 49er. But you get him back, which elevates your left guard in Elton Jenkins, which elevates your right guard because you can sit down the rookie who's playing at right guard. It makes your entire offensive line better. So the Packers offense is getting monumentally better. Oh, and by the way, on defense, they get, at some point here, Zadarius Smith and Jair Alexander. In Alexander's case, one of the best players at his position, and Zadarius Smith is no joke either. So the Packers, as I've been trying to say, since I ranked them second coming into the year and was doubted heavily for doing so, are a remarkably complete football team. Matt LaFleur is understated as one of the best coaches in the NFL, which I do firmly believe. And you got Aaron Rodgers in there too, who didn't even do much in this game, but did what he could. So, great team win for the Green Bay Packers. And then for the Cardinals, I don't think it's an overreaction moment, at least for viewers of this channel. I wasn't selling Arizona as the best team in the NFL like some were. I did have them second, and I do love the Cardinals. I got the Kyler jersey behind me. We'll talk about MVP later on in the show. I think he's still right in there, though this was his worst game of the year. He wasn't able to hang in the pocket. He wasn't able to kind of have that. You want to see quarterbacks that can adjust when teams come out with good game plans. They said, Kyler, we're going to force you to play from the pocket, and he didn't do a very good job of it. The interceptions weren't his fault in this game, but he did really not play in structure from the pocket to the level that he's done in some other games this season, especially when I look at like that Browns game. He did a really good job of that. He didn't have that counterpunch. He missed a big throw over the middle of the field late in this game that was not good to see, I suppose. But, I think Kyler's going to be just fine. It was his worst game of the year. I think he'll be better moving forward. I know he's dealing with a little bit of an injury. The one takeaway from the Cardinals here was, and by the way, DeAndre Hopkins was out with a hamstring for the most of this game too. He's their best weapon. So, I think the Cardinals offense will be just fine. I am a little bit worried about the line play for the Cardinals. They've got some injuries. J.J. Watt's going to be done for the year. So on the defensive side of the ball, they kind of reprove that they can play really good defense up front without J.J. Watt, who's kind of the heart and soul of any defense. So that's a takeaway for the Cardinals in this one. I do think offensively they'll look better as they move forward. But yeah, that's my breakdown from that game. More impressed by the Packers than I was disappointed in the Cardinals. But yeah, stock up for the Green Bay Packers, that's for sure. All right, the next game I want to talk about is the Niners at the Bears. This, to me, was actually one of the most impactful games with the most takeaways this weekend, and the one that I actually enjoyed the most for a couple of reasons. Really, on both sides of the ball, we got to see some good quarterback play from these teams for the first time this year, maybe. And this was a statement win from the San Francisco 49ers to just kind of say, don't forget about us. I can't tell you how many questions I've gotten over the last couple weeks about, is Kyle Shanahan on the hot seat? Is he overrated? And I was even, as one of the biggest Kyle Shanahan truthers out there, starting to have my doubts. And I still will say there's been some issues, but this is what the Shanahan offense is supposed to look like. And they're starting to get these pieces back together with a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo, who I don't think is going to get the credit he deserves for this game. I genuinely think, outside of the Rams against the Texans, I think Jimmy Garoppolo played the best quarterbacked game of anybody this week. He was really impressive. Couple missed throws early on, that's a part of his game. But he was outstanding from the pocket. The pocket manipulation, sensing the pressure, keeping his eyes downfield, getting beyond that first progression. This was the showcase game from Jimmy Garoppolo for why Shanahan still likes him in there. It wasn't just the point guard stuff where he's got these cool handling skills and quick release and stuff, which is a part of his success in this game and why he works inside this offense, but he was actually effective pushing the ball more than just on slants and bubble screens and stuff. So Jimmy Garoppolo was really impressive, running the ball too. So that was a statement win from the Niners. They get Jimmy going. The offensive line is healthy and dominant. I mean, I don't know why I always forget Trent Williams' name. I always want to call him Teron Armstead for some reason. But Trent Williams, one of the best tackle performances you'll see, just paving ways in the run game, locked down against Robert Quinn, who's having a good year. Just dominant left tackle play. The rest of the line playing really well too. You got Laken Tomlinson's been one of the better guards in football. Alex Mack at center looks pretty good for his age. Right guard, they got Brunskill is a good weak link. And then right tackle, Mike McGlinchey. So they're a good, healthy offensive line mauling dudes. Debo freaking Samuel, man. He is so explosive. He keeps climbing week by week in these receiver conversations because we know he's quite possibly the best receiver with the ball in his hands in the NFL, just as far as speed and vision and breaking tackles, making guys miss. But now he's catching balls down the field, and he's been like a good go-to contested catch target for these Niners quarterbacks as well. So Debo's climbing, and they got Ayuk going this week. He had some good plays, getting involved for the first time really this year. Oh, and by the way, you know who's showing up at practice on Wednesday? George Kittle. So I think the Niners had a statement win against the Bears, and I'm not saying I'm all the way back in on the Niners, but was very impressed by that performance, and they could surprise over these next couple weeks. I'm going to have my picks here on YouTube on Thursday this week that are normally Patreon exclusive, but I will spoil that I have a contingency pick this week that if George Kittle plays against the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday Night Football, I'm going to be picking the 49ers. I was that impressed by them. We just talked about some of those physical woes that the Cardinals have. I think the Niners can match up against the Cardinals in the same way that the Packers did. So, big win for the Niners. Then for the Bears, interesting game. I think we learned a lot about the Bears this week. Number one is that this is what we wanted to see from Justin Fields and what Bears fans needed to see from Justin Fields. We can put the Dalton stuff behind us at this point. You can debate whether or not the timing was right to go to Fields. At the end of the day, it's the same as what I said coming into the year for the Bears. Nothing really matters for this team other than having that sort of 2020 Chargers season where you learn that your quarterback is the future, which is played well into the Chargers' hands as far as recruiting a coach they wanted and having legitimate expectations in year two. And if Fields can do this, the Bears will have something to build on. He was dominant running the football. We all saw the 4th and 1 play where he created. He did more than that. But what was probably more important is that the Bears, I think, are kind of learning, Matt Nagy or not, that's a whole different conversation. I still think the Bears are kind of learning what Fields is going to be good at in the passing game early on in his career as he develops, because they've had a lot of hiccups. I think what they learned in this game is really the more bootlegs, the better, because it's going to open up the run game. Herbert's been awesome, by the way. Khalil Herbert at running back, good. But it's going to open up things in the run game. And he's so natural on the move, his arm on the move. That's just kind of his comfort zone. So the more bootlegs, the better, which to me screams they should go with a Shanahan-style coach next year, by the way. Get that wide zone scheme going here. But that's a different conversation to have. But the more boots, the better. And he was really good at hitting those timing hitch routes on the outside. If they're going to back off, he's very capable of accurately putting the ball on time to those quick hitting hitch routes on the outside if he's getting off coverage. So those are two things that I think the Bears kind of learned that can be go-tos of this offense. And Fields he had his best game of the year by far. And nothing else is going to matter if he looks good. So that's what they got to stick to, continue to figure out what he does well, lean into his ability as a runner and his athleticism in the play-action boot game. Fun to see. And then another thing we learned about the Bears is that I genuinely think that the Bears' window as an elite defense has closed. And that means their season's done. I don't really even see them sneaking in as the 7 seed. But even if they do, yes, Fields is exciting, but they still have so much to figure out offensively. I'm not going to act like the offense is good all of a sudden, but Fields looks good. Because they need elite defense if they're going to win any sort of realistic games, or you know what I'm saying, with the defense playing like this. I know Khalil Mack is out, but we don't know if he's going to get back to full strength. And frankly, when he's been out there healthy, he hasn't been that game-wrecking force, and this defense hasn't been amazing. But their secondary is broken right now. They don't really have any good players back there. Eddie Jackson is just not – he's not a star at this point. He's fine, but their corners, blah. Even their linebackers. Roquan makes some good plays in coverage, but he's not a good run defender. And up front, they don't have a lot of great pieces either. Keem Hicks is still solid, but he's regressed in time. This Bears defense window has closed. I don't think Sean Diassi is doing a great job for that unit either. But yeah, the Bears are kind of done as far as winning games and having any sort of playoff hopes this year. But lean into Fields. Watch what he can do. Learn his strengths. And honestly, start thinking about who your next head coach is going to be, because it is time, I think, to move on from Nagy. And a big part of that is I think his scheme doesn't fit Fields' skill set all that well. Nagy's got this kind of quick-hitting passing game that just doesn't pair with Fields. Fields wants to be on the move. He wants to hit those big plays. And I don't think it's a great fit. So that's a lot to take away from this game. I enjoyed watching this because there was a lot of moments inside of that Bears-Niners game that stood out to me. Okay, we got the New England Chargers game, another meaningful game for both parties. Good for the Patriots, bad for the Chargers. So this, to me, was the Patriots and Bill Belichick's best game of the season. Of course, they beat up on the Jets last week, but this was kind of building off of that. And a big part of that is the coach and quarterback stuff is starting to come together. And Bill Belichick had his best coached game probably since they last played the Chargers, right? They beat the Chargers 45-0 last year. It wasn't the other way around. For some reason, I always think it was the Chargers that won 45-0, but I'm pretty sure it was the Patriots that embarrassed the Chargers last year. So the Patriots have the Chargers number. But for Bill Belichick, this was a really impressive coaching performance. He's known for that do-your-job mentality as well as being an excellent defensive schemer, and we saw both in this game. Offensively, they came out, just like we talked about with the Packers, they recognized their advantages. They ran the ball very effectively. And Mac Jones, just good, by the way. Pushed the ball downfield a little bit more. He's super accurate. He looks, like I keep saying, like a 5-year vet. He's right there with your Kirk Cousins and that group of players, in my opinion. And it's unfortunate I did my quarterback tiers on this podcast last week because I think now I would push Mac Jones up a spot. He's a good quarterback. I don't know how much better he'll get than this, but very impressive game for Mac Jones. Back to Bill Belichick, two things stood out to me here. Number one, really good defensive game plan. Closed in on what the Chargers wanted to do in that quick passing game. That they have Joe Lombardi, who's the Saints' influence on this offense, sticks, slant flats, that kind of stuff. Belichick's defense was all over that stuff. Herbert had nowhere to go with the football on early downs, and then they forced him really to try and be a playmaker on later downs, and there just wasn't a lot there. So it was a really good defensive game plan by the Patriots, using Adrian Phillips in such creative ways to cut off those short routes. You've got Miles, what's his name? The kid from Washington State, year 2, 5'9" slot corner, Miles Bryant. Played some safety, played some slot corner. He's playing really good in the slot with, the super fast corner that they've had that has played a lot of slot for them. He's done for the year, I think. And getting Miles Bryant to step up in that slot, huge. You got J.C. Jackson out there killing it. So just impressive all-around game from the defense. And then also a notable moment late in this game where the Patriots were driving. They were up a touchdown with about 6 minutes to go. And in classic Bill Belichick fashion, you see a bunch of different players sliding inbounds instead of running out of bounds. And they knew what the game plan was for that drive. It was milk as much clock. Once they crossed the 50-yard line, it was, we are going to milk as much time off of this clock as humanly possible. We know that this is probably an approach that's going to result in a field goal, but as long as we can get a couple of first downs, we'll kick the field goal with like 2.5, 3 minutes left, and we'll be up 10. And they're not going to have enough time. And that's exactly how it played out. The Chargers got the ball back. They go and score a touchdown to make it a 3-point game, but there was no time left. And just simply them knowing that they had to maximize the amount of time that they burned in that 6-play window where multiple different players, I kid you not, just gave themselves up before running out of bounds. And then they would milk the clock. They'd snap the ball with like 3 seconds, take another 40 seconds off the clock. It was just perfect execution to know what they had to do to come out of that game with a win. So really good game plan by the Patriots, who are now 4-4. Their offensive line is healthy, and I don't think it's a coincidence that they are now playing much better football, running the ball better, taking control of the clock like we saw there, kicking Michael Onwenu out to right tackle, as we talked about a few weeks ago. It's been a huge adjustment by this staff because Justin Herron was single-handedly like costing that team games at right tackle. So you stick Onwenu out there, who's super impressive. And now Ted Karras has stepped up at left guard. It's a really good offensive line, a good run game. Mac Jones playing well on top of it. And defensively, they are shaping into place. So very impressive win by the New England Patriots, and I don't think they're going to go away. I think they're only getting better as they move forward in kind of classic Belichick fashion, right? All these new pieces, give them a little bit of time to put it all together, and voila. As for the Chargers, I think they're just an incredibly matchup-dependent team, and they're a big play-dependent team. I think they really struggle against these physical teams. We've seen that now. The Cowboys ran the ball down their throats. The Ravens ran the ball down their throats. The Patriots, it wasn't an explosive run game, but they really struggled to get the Patriots offense off the field. And I think that has to do with their front being incredibly squishy. And even with Bosa up there, a lot of times he's in these kind of weird, he's got his hand in the dirt as like a 3 or a 4-eye because they are a 3-4 base defense at their core. A lot of times you actually see Bosa getting blown off the ball because he's an undersized interior rusher. Now they'll put him at outside linebacker, and I think he's much better out there. But he is kind of a weird scheme fit, something I talked about with the Chargers coming into the year. So they're just squishy up front. They give up the run. And it doesn't help either that they play this modern quarters defense. That's Brandon Staley's thing. That's what he did with the Rams, was we're going to put a blanket on the offense, and this is a strategy that's going to help us beat these explosive offenses because we're not going to give up the big play. Well, that's a dream scenario for the Cowboys, for the Ravens, for the Patriots. They're like, we'll take these light fronts, and we'll take 5 yards a pop all day long. There's nothing you can do about it. So that's an issue for the Chargers. They're going to have to do a better job, I think, of recognizing the teams that they need to learn how to play more physical against. And they're going to have to make some personnel changes, I think, to play better against these style of teams. So that's a concern. Am I worried about the offense? Not really. They don't have a great run game. So that's just part of who they are. I will say that I think they're probably a year away from really unlocking this offense on a consistent basis. I think Herbert's still very young. I like his processor for a second-year player, but it surely isn't perfect. And I think he's a little bit dependent on these giant completions down the field that he's more than capable of. But I wish he had a little bit more speed to take advantage of that. Like maybe not Tyler Johnson. Who was Tyron Johnson? Tyron Johnson, the receiver that they cut, that no one thought they should cut. They could use him right now because Jalen Guyton's not giving that to him. They really could use a guy that could take the top off of these defenses because Keenan Allen, great receiver, he's a short to intermediate guy. Mike Williams, great deep threat, but he's not like burning by dudes and giving Herbert those clear I got him. I got to just rip this thing. He's going to catch it in stride and go 60 yards for a touchdown. That's not Mike Williams. Good player, but I think they're missing that aspect of their offense. They're missing that Henry Ruggs or a Tyron Johnson on that offense. So I think they're a few pieces away. The Chargers are still a young team that are growing, and they could be kind of like the Cardinals last year, where they're kind of exceeding expectations a little bit, and maybe they're just a year away from being that top 5 to 10 team. They're more of that wild card 10 to 14 team that's a little bit more matchup dependent. But still a fun game either way, and a huge win for the Patriots, who were kind of getting back on track. They played the Bucks tight. They played the Cowboys tight. They've won some big games in a row here now. The Patriots are not a bad football team. So speaking of the Bucks, that's my next game here, Tampa Bay at New Orleans. Really fun game, but an interesting one because, for one, like, how much does that suck for Jameis Winston? The dude gets his opportunity. He's clearly worked at his weaknesses, which you love to see. It's kind of like the reverse Ryan Tannehill, honestly, where Tannehill wasn't aggressive enough with Miami, gets to Tennessee and starts playing more aggressively. It's been the complete opposite with Jameis in Tampa, where he's honed in that aggressiveness, and I do feel like he was week by week kind of feeling out that balance of when he needs to push the ball downfield and when he needs to eat it. And he was so good in the first quarter of this game before he got hurt. Threw a beautiful touchdown in the back corner of the end zone to Smith, who, like, they're finally getting receivers healthy, getting Deontay Harris going. They're going to get Michael Thomas back. Like, the Saints, man, we're starting to feel like legit Super Bowl, well, let's just say legit playoff contenders. And that injury just sucks, man. So you go from Jameis down to Trevor Siemian. Made a couple throws, but in general wasn't very good. This was more about the Saints defense continuing to be probably the best in the NFL, maybe second best behind Pittsburgh. So well coached, so versatile up front. Demario Davis, maybe the best linebacker in the NFL right now. This coverage unit is outstanding. And it was just a blow to the Saints to lose Jameis, because now you're kind of back to square one with quarterback. It felt like they were just kind of getting that figured out. And now it's Taysom Hill, Trevor Siemian. I don't know if what the deal is on the quarterback they drafted, Ian Book, 4th round pick. I don't know. I feel like they're going to lose a lot of explosiveness in this offense. They didn't have a lot to begin with, but they had some with Jameis Winston, and I think that aspect's gone now, and you're gonna see teams really crunching that box now against them and forcing Trevor Siemian and Taysom Hill to beat them over the top, and I don't know if those players can. So I think it's going to be a huge blow to this Saints offense, but they do have one of the best defenses in the league, so they're kind of like the Pittsburgh Steelers a little bit. I don't know. Huge win, regardless, for the Saints. For the Bucks, not super worried. They kind of shot themselves in the foot this game, which is uncharacteristic of this Bucks team. You have Tom Brady with 3 turnovers in this game that were not pretty. They're uncharacteristic of Tom Brady. It's a small sample size of him doing that. He's played very good football this year. It was his worst game of the season, in my opinion. But you still saw how kind of easy things are for this offense. And that was without Antonio Brown, by the way, who I think will be back sometime soon. I don't know. I know he's got some ankle injuries. He is 34 years old, but still, they shredded man coverage. Chris Godwin, they couldn't cover him underneath. Mike Evans, that vertical threat. They got O.J. Howard going. So things are still very easy for this offense, but not at that insane explosive level that we've seen when Antonio Brown is out there. And the turnovers and the penalties, I'm really not worried about the Bucks. They just kind of, I'm not going to say they beat themselves. The Saints took this game from them, but they did kind of beat themselves in this game. I think the Bucks are going to be just fine. I think they got the bye week this week. Getting all these guys back healthy, they're still extremely scary. So I'm not really worried about the Bucks. And let's move on. Tennessee at Indianapolis. This is another kind of sloppy, weird game. I don't really know what to take away from this one because Tennessee loses Derrick Henry, but they win this game, and Derrick Henry wasn't good in this game, and they Titans really just won this game by Tannehill connecting with A.J. Brown, who's insane over the middle of the field, just a medium route guru, really is what he is, and Tannehill's so efficient in that part of the field. and then just forcing enough mistakes from Carson Wentz. I think the Colts, fans hate it when I do this, but I think both Titans and Colts fans hate me anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I think the Colts outplayed the Titans in this game, minus like 4 really stupid plays from Carson Wentz that ended up costing them this game. There's multiple moments in this game where it felt like the Colts should have pulled away. So just kind of a weird, sloppy game. There was also a turnover in the middle of this game where Tannehill threw a bad pick, didn't see the defensive end drop into coverage, where it feels like Tannehill does that a decent amount, where he just doesn't see guys underneath and he puts it right into their breadbasket. It feels like it's always against the Colts too. But the DN fumbled. Tyquan Lewis, who looks like probably tore his ACL in this play, going down to the ground in pain, coughs the ball up. And then it looked like the Colts recovered it, but they gave the ball to the Titans, and then I think they scored a touchdown later on that drive. It's kind of a weird turn of events, and I don't know. I don't have a ton of takeaways from this game. I actually thought the Colts played pretty well, except for Wentz freaking blew it, man, and looked like the Carson Wentz that the Eagles wanted nothing to do with, and that's worst-case scenario for the Colts because it looked like maybe Wentz was building something. Weird game. Both these teams probably come out worse for wear with, the Colts. Wentz looks bad. They lose Tyquan Lewis, who's been good, lose another game. And the Titans, kind of a sloppy, weird win where they lose Derrick Henry. So I don't have a lot of good takeaways from this game. I just wanted to cover my thoughts on it, I suppose. Okay, Dallas at Minnesota. Sunday Night Football. What a win for the Dallas Cowboys, man. That was another building block on the Mike McCarthy Coach of the Year conversation. And we'll do my Coach of the Year later in the show. It's not going to be Mike McCarthy, but I think he's got a case. Because, yes, Dak is awesome. And the Cowboys probably win this game by 20 points if Dak plays. But Dak wasn't here. So you saw a team that last year, Mike McCarthy looked terrible, but you saw a defense that couldn't do anything. You saw an offense that fell apart without Dak. This year, they're completely different. And if it's a single season award based on expectations, even if last year was in most part, like, obviously injuries suck, but Mike McCarthy was kind of the big reason that they looked so bad last year, they are a super well-coached team this year. And they came out with the right game plan. And everything was working here for the Cowboys. You have the run game playing well, the defense continuing to step up against a good Vikings offense, and the play calling super creative, doing enough weird stuff to create big plays. Cooper Rush trusting these awesome receivers late in this game, and those receivers executed. You got to shout out Terrence Steele getting the start at right tackle. Interesting coaching decision. They have Lyle Collins, highly paid right tackle, healthy, but not starting at right tackle because Terrence Steele, who those of you that have been catching up on studs and duds know that he's been a significant piece in this entire Cowboys machine, who's been probably the best offensive line in the NFL. Not probably, they have been by far the best offensive line in the NFL this year. Terrence Steele is a part of that. He gets the start over Lyle Collins, who's probably worth a first-round pick to somebody if they wanted to do that. Everything is working for the Dallas Cowboys, and that has to come back to the culture that Mike McCarthy has set. Dan Quinn, clearly the right hire. He's letting Kellen Moore thrive as a play caller, and he's overseeing everything. And I can't remember. Harbaugh won the Coach of the Year in 2019, right, for the Ravens. If Harbaugh is going to get it in 2019, Mike McCarthy is sure as hell a candidate this year for the Cowboys. And to get a big win like that in prime time against a tough Vikings team on the road without Dak Prescott as a late decision scratch, super impressive night for the Dallas Cowboys all around. As for the Vikings, like, where do you want to start? I said this in the power rankings, but it's just so perfect. Halloween night, this was all of the Vikings fans' biggest fears realized in a Sunday night Halloween horror show. What a poorly coached game by the Vikings. And this was another example of old school football mentality costing teams games in the modern era of 2021. Because they came out not to lose this game. Ran the ball first and second down, screens on third downs. Basically, Kirk Cousins and the play calling coming together and saying, we don't need to push the ball downfield. We'll score 20 points in this game, and we'll hold the backup quarterback to 17, and we'll walk out of here. We'll escape with a win. Why the hell is that your mentality if you're the Vikings? They should have won this game. 4-point favorites against Cooper Rush, who wasn't good in this game. He made plenty of mistakes early on that the Vikings should have sealed this game away by the third quarter. But no. They were conservative with the clock, with everything from start to finish. And they allowed the Cowboys to hang around and sneak through the back door, make some plays in the end, and win the game. And that was unacceptable for that to be the Vikings' approach. And that's kind of the deal with your Zimmers and your Pete Carrolls and a guy like Joe Judge who has that same mentality for the Giants and a Vic Fangio. Game's changed, man. Time to wake up. And the frustrating thing is the Vikings have explosive aspects of their team. And when they have to open the game up, when they go into a game against like Seattle and they know like, okay, we gotta put our foot down and score some damn points. We got to push the ball downfield to Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. They look great offensively. But they sheltered up because they felt like they didn't have to do anything to win this game and just had to ride things close to the belt. This isn't 2000. You know, a guy like Cooper Rush comes in. Yeah, he's not great, but this is still a guy that was ultra productive in college who can come in and make enough plays to beat you. The game's changed, man. Offense is a lot easier for these quarterbacks. And that's what we saw here. So just a terribly disappointing game from Kirk Cousins, from Mike Zimmer. And how can you not sit there watching that game and say, this just isn't right? Like, it's so beyond time at this point, I think, for us to start rebuilding. If you're the Vikings, like, new quarterback, new coach, move on to a new era. And that era is 2022 and beyond of modern football. I like Zimmer. I think if he wants to keep coaching, he can be a phenomenal defensive coordinator somewhere. But as a head coach, I think that game was evidence that the game has changed. The game hasn't passed him by. I still think he's a good defensive coordinator. But the style of play and Zimmer's inability to catch up with that has certainly changed. Okay. The rest of these games, I'm literally going to do a speed round because they weren't very good. And I didn't have a lot of takeaways. So, literal speed round here. We got a lot more to go for this show. Carolina at Atlanta. Matt Ryan was terrible in this game. I picked the Falcons to win this game. I picked them to cover the spread. And I broke my number one rule. Never bet on Matt Ryan. The guy needs so much support to play at even a above average level. Didn't get support in this game, and he crumbled. Carolina has a great defense. Stephon Gilmore gets his debut, and Sam Darnold gets injured. Their offense still sucks, but they exploited Matt Ryan in this game. Cincinnati at the New York Jets. Fun game, certainly. But I did put it in the speed round because I don't know how much to take away from that. You know, the Bengals still played a good game offensively here. Their O-line, I will say, if you want to take away from this game, the Bengals O-line is still a roadblock for this team. When they go against good pass rushes, I think they're going to have to adjust and find better ways to shelter that offensive line because really you had a fourth down stop where Quinnen Williams just blows by, sacks Joe Burrow, and then you have the huge interception late in this game where Shaq Lawson gets in and Burrow under instant pressure trying to kind of get rid of the ball almost. It gets deflected, popped up in the air, pick. That sets up the game-tying interception. But ultimately, two big game-deciding defensive plays. Also I'm running out of adjectives here, but I'll use horrific again for the call that went against the Bengals in this game. Was not a guarantee that the Bengals were going to win that game, but I really felt like if the Bengals get the ball back there, 2 minutes left, they would have had about 20 yards to go to kick a field goal, at least to send it to overtime. They weren't having any issues moving the ball. I think they probably have a good chance of going to score a touchdown to win that game, but they were robbed that opportunity by one of the worst personal foul calls you will ever see. The Jets flip it out to the flat on 3rd and 7-ish, and slot corner comes down, beautiful form tackle, but because the running back, or the ball carrier, I can't remember if it was a receiver or running back who got the ball here, but because he lowers his head right before the defender gets there, it turns into helmet to helmet. They flag the defense, automatic first down, game over. Just absolutely terrible call against the Bengals. So I didn't lower the Bengals in my power rankings here. Hell, they actually went up after the Derrick Henry news. So I'm not worried about the Bengals. I don't like their offensive line. That hasn't changed. The defense didn't have a very good game. They got kind of blindsided by the Jets that finally had good line play and good play calling. Mike White actually played a pretty good game. So I think they probably was kind of a trap game type of deal. And they kind of went in there and expected to play great defense against Mike White. And the Jets, with that underdog mentality, had some good run after catch. Surely the Bengals tackling was bad in this game, the worst it's been this season. And they had some creative play calling on screens and getting guys open. So, yeah, the Jets just kind of snuck in the back door and blindsided the Bengals. I'm not super worried about the Bengals, but I also wasn't ranking them as a top 10 team coming into this game. So I guess it depends on what your expectations were. Okay, Rams at Houston. The Rams traded for Von Miller. That's sweet. I already ranked them number 1 in the power rankings coming into the week, and then 2 hours later they acquire Von Miller. Whoa. The Rams are just all in, and I think it's rightfully so. Again, I thought they were the best team. Now you're adding Von Miller to that defense. That just is another player that can force mistakes and create stops, which is just more times to give the ball to this offense that's rolling. They're definite Super Bowl favorites right now, and health is a big part of that. They're also they might just be better than the Bucs and the Packers. I don't know if they're better than a healthy Bucs team, but they're not just as good as those teams, but they're healthy, which you can't say about the Packers and the Bucs right now. The NFC is so awesome. The NFC playoffs and the race to the finish here is going to be epic. Dolphins at Bills. Bills good, Dolphins bad. Just what do you want to say about this game? The Dolphins offense is unwatchable. What are they doing with 2 offensive coordinators, Tua, the offensive line? It's a disaster. We've well covered the Dolphins and what my thoughts on them coming into the year were and how that surfaced. We don't need to beat it into the dirt. They have a lot of work to do, and the Bills are super good. Eagles at Lions. Lions bad. Good job, Eagles. You dominated a pathetic football team. Let's move on to next week. Pittsburgh at Cleveland. Weird kind of defensive game. Myles Garrett is unbelievable. Our next segment is going to be our award ceremony. Just a little teaser there. But the Browns' offense is broken right now. They're not catching footballs. They're not running the ball with their current slate of injuries. And Baker's, it doesn't have a lot of areas to go with the football, and oftentimes when he does, they're getting dropped, but he's also not playing well. So it's just a broken offense right now. Stefanski's got a lot of work to do. They have the talent to get this thing back on track, but they got to do it really freaking quickly because this is getting out of control bad. And you also got to credit the Steelers' defense. I mean, T.J. Watt was incredible. The Steelers' defense is really good, and they're finding their identity. I'll reinforce my take that Juju getting injured was quietly better for this team because they have a very simplistic offense, right? We're going to run the ball, and we're basically just going to have first read, quick hitting passes from Big Ben. And I think quick hitting passes and manufacturing touches for Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool at the highest rate instead of Juju Smith-Schuster, who's just not an explosive player, is a good thing for this offense. So it's not that Juju's a bad player. I think he still has a super bright career ahead of him. I do think Juju needs to find a different, better scheme fit than where he's at right now. But anyway, the Steelers have an identity. They know if they can dictate the terms of the game, which for them is play defense, keep them under 20 points, and just recognize that we're going to punt the ball, but we're going to have an easy offense for Big Ben to play point guard, let Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, who's awesome, by the way. What a steal he was in the second round. Had a first-round grade on him that people didn't think was justified. He's sweet. And Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, playmaker types, right? All these guys. Good catching in traffic, good run after catch. Just put the ball in their hands. Hopefully they can fight for some tough yards. Hopefully we can run the ball down the field. If we can't, we'll punt, trust the defense, try again. If they can dictate those terms, they can win the game. If they can't really play good defense, which is the foundation of that game script, they're going to be in trouble. Playing from behind, having to push the ball downfield more, buying more time for Big Ben to create big plays, less time to run the ball. That's when it's going to be a problem for the Steelers. But they have a game script going into every single game that they're going to aim for. And if they can hit that, they can beat pretty much anybody. It's just a very thin margin of error to aim for. Jacksonville at Seattle. Why is Urban Meyer still here? Washington at Denver. Washington couldn't outscore Teddy Bridgewater with Tim Patrick against a defense that didn't have Von Miller. This Washington era was fun while it lasted, but I do think it's time to hit the reset button on this thing. If Ron Rivera is here to elevate the defense and set the tone and a culture, I don't think the culture's broken per se, but the more you lose, the more any culture is going to fall apart. Case in point, Detroit. So if that's not there, and he can't turn Washington with that front and this secondary into one of the best defenses in the NFL, it's a problem. I think Ron Rivera always had a bit of a ceiling on what he brings to the table as a coach from an X's and O's standpoint. I've never looked at Rivera as this football genius. I think he's an excellent leader and maybe needs to just go be a defensive coordinator somewhere or something like that. But yeah, there's your game recap. So I hit the playoff prediction machine, went in, picked every game for the rest of the year, and came out with my standings predictions from this point forward. So I'm just going to kind of go division by division, lay out how I think plays out, and we'll talk about what may or may not be surprising. So NFC North, I've got Packers finishing at 14-3, so losing 2 down the stretch. They've got some tough games in there against the Rams, Seahawks with Russell Wilson coming back probably week 10, I think that is. So I've got them going 13-4. Got the Bears at 7-10. Fields heating up a little bit. Maybe can steal a few more wins as they go. Minnesota at 6-11, which is actually worth noting because I had the Vikings at 6-11 coming into the season. Vikings fans were not so happy about that. But with Daniil Hunter now done for the year and that disheartening loss against the Cowboys, the schedule getting pretty tough as they move forward, that's looking like one of my better predictions coming into the year is that the Vikings actually were going to drop a few more games than people thought coming into the year. And my prediction for that team actually has not changed, ironically, at 6-11 now, 6-11 then. Detroit at 1-17. I had them going 2-15. Lions fans weren't particularly happy about that, but looking pretty good right now. It's going to be tough for them to steal a game. I think they can do it, but That's 1-16, not 1-17. But NFC North pretty much according to plan so far. NFC East, I have Dallas finishing at 13-4. They are incredibly strong. Their schedule's not that tough moving forward. They do play the Cardinals, and I can't remember if they play the Rams. I guess they probably do. I guess I should have written that down, but I know they play the Cardinals. That'll be a really fun game later in the season. But I think they finish strong. I think they get Dak back and honestly clinch this division a few weeks from now. I got the Eagles at 7-10, the Giants at 6-11. And I should apologize to Cowboys fans because they've been much better than I thought. I think the biggest difference there has been the defense really coming together and Mike McCarthy having this offense just rolling. So good job, Cowboys, proving me wrong. I had them at 9-8 coming into the year, kind of hand in hand with Washington, where I was very wrong. But with Philly and the Giants, I had coming into the year, I had the Giants and Eagles at 5 wins. Probably going to play out about the same here. Eagles maybe slightly better than I expected, but for the most part, those two teams are very mediocre like I expected. But the team I was really wrong about was the Washington football team, where I've got them finishing 3-14. I don't see a whole lot of wins in sight. I think this defense will show flashes as we move forward, but Chase Young's been a disappointment. The secondary's been a disappointment, and this offense has nothing to speak of. Now, their schedule is supposed to open up and get easier as they move forward, but I don't know, is Ryan Fitzpatrick going to come in? This team's a mess right now. And I don't see them winning a lot more games moving forward. So 3-14 projection for the Washington football team. And they're going to be in the mix for one of the top picks in this draft. So some right, some wrong on the NFC East as far as my preseason predictions. But now the NFC South. So I actually have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning out. For one, their schedule is actually pretty easy moving forward. Honestly, they don't have a lot of tough games left. But also, they got a bye week and a lot of guys coming back healthy in the next couple weeks. So I think they're going to really get hot and healthy heading into the playoffs, just as they did last year, which is terrifying for the rest of the NFL. But I've got them finishing at 15-2, which is actually one win better than I had them coming into the year at 14-3. And then I have New Orleans finishing 9-8. Which is a very respectable finish given their quarterback situation. I think they're going to be very week to week. I think we will see this offense really struggle some weeks. And then I think we'll see some weeks where this defense is able to carry and Sean Payton is creative enough to manufacture some offense here. Also getting Michael Thomas back should help with the backup quarterback situation. So I still think they finish strong and actually sneak in. I believe they get the 7 seed in this situation. I'll recap the seeds at the end of this, but I got the Saints at 9-8. I had them at 7-10 coming into the season, so a little bit better than I expected there. And then Carolina at 6-11. I'm so worried about this offense. The O-line has been as bad as I could have feared, and Darnold's been honestly about as expected. He's been a little bit better than he was for the Jets, but the old Sam Darnold is still kind of in there, so that's just tough when your offense is genuinely one of the worst in the NFL. And I don't even know when and if they're going to get Christian McCaffrey back. So they're tough. And then Atlanta, I have it at 5-12. They really do piss me off. They really do. They trade away Julio Jones. Then they don't use Kyle Pitts. Calvin Ridley's not on the team right now. Defensively, they just don't have any talent. I don't understand where and when the Falcons are going anywhere. But that's pretty consistent, actually, with how I had them coming into the year. That's actually the exact order I predicted them to go, outside of a 2-game swing for New Orleans in the positive direction. That's almost exactly where I had this division coming in. So then we got the NFC West, where I have the Rams going 15-2. So that is just one more loss for them on the season. I think the loss I had for them was actually against the Seahawks. Just kind of Russell Wilson pulling off some magic. It's hard to know which game the Rams are going to lose. They're going to be favored in probably every game throughout the rest of the season, maybe not at Lambeau. But they're scary, man. And Von Miller coming in here. I do wonder if the injury bug will eventually catch up with this Rams team that's been the healthiest team in the league for like 8 years. Certainly in the Sean McVay era they have been. They're perfectly healthy right now. So I do wonder if that's going to last or not. But so far, so good for them. And then I have the Cardinals at 13-4. So finishing, 6-3 with a tough schedule ahead. I think the offense will be just fine. I think the defense takes a little bit step down post J.J. Watt, but they're going to be a damn good wild card team at 13-4. Again, the NFC is just loaded, especially this division. I've got the Niners finishing 10-7. This very well could be a recency bias reaction to how good they looked against the Bears, but I really think they're getting healthy. They're waking up, doing what they want to do. I think the defense is getting better week by week, and I think a win against Arizona this weekend is possible and could really turn this team into a wild card team, which is exciting, knowing that Trey Lance is kind of on the horizon, but they're starting to do some of the stuff now that we knew they were capable coming into the year. And then I got Seattle at 9-8. So I had them at 10-7 coming into the year. Obviously, the Russ injury sets them back, but they've kind of weathered the storm a little bit. I think they're on bye week this week, right? And then they go to Lambeau. Russ just got the pin out of his thumb. I think he'll probably be back. So they're right back in the mix. And it's just going to come down to like tiebreakers and if they can win some tough games, which they're very capable of. So 9-8 for Seattle. But as far as what that means for the playoff seeding, I project Rams getting the 1 seed, getting that tiebreaker over the Bucs. The Bucs with the 2 seed, the Packers at the 3 seed, the Cowboys at the 4 seed. Then I have the Cardinals with the 5 seed. That's probably pretty normal, I would think. And then I have San Francisco sneaking in, getting that 6 seed, and New Orleans with the 7 seed at 9-8. So now, for the AFC, starting in the AFC North, I have the Baltimore Ravens winning this division out at 12-5. I think Lamar playing the best quarterback in that division right now. I trust that defense. I like how the playmakers are kind of getting healthy. Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman. It's a good football team. They're kind of in this weird tier right now between those elite teams and the more fringy contenders. I think they're in between there in kind of their own conversation as we sit here today. So I like their future outlook, though this division is super tight, and honestly, anyone can still come out with this division right now. And these guys still have a ton of games between each other, obviously. So Cleveland, I have next at 10-7. I do like Stefanski. And at some point, if they're well coached, which I do think they are, the talent on that team when they get healthy moving forward, I would think wins out in a lot of situations. Definitely worried about some of the stuff going on with the offense that's been concerning, and they're probably not going to be consistent enough come playoff time passing the ball to be a Super Bowl team, but I still will be a little bit surprised if they don't correct some stuff and become a playoff team. So 10-7 for the Browns. The Bengals at 9-8. A little bit of a tough schedule moving forward. Again, I think they're a little bit matchup dependent. When they go against bad pass rushes, I think you'll see this team explode. Better pass rushes, I think, can contain this passing game a little bit. And then Pittsburgh at 9-8. We just kind of talked about them. It's difficult to dictate the game plan that they want. I think this team is going to be within a score against pretty much anybody, but it's just a matter of a lack of explosiveness on offense that's going to make things really tough on them. So I've got the Steelers at 9-8, actually in 4th place in the AFC North. And as far as my preseason predictions there, I was too high in Cleveland. I thought Cleveland would roll at 13-4, really build off of what they had last year. They've actually kind of regressed from a lot of the stuff they were doing last year offensively. Baltimore I had at 11-6, so I was kind of bang on them. And then I had Pittsburgh at 10-7, pretty close. But the Bengals, certainly better than I thought. I think Zach Taylor's play calling has actually been a little bit better than I expected. And I think that Bengals defense has been the huge surprise. Of course, they struggled against the Jets, but the Bengals defense has been really good this year. So I had them at 6-10-1. I actually predicted a tie, and I came damn close to predicting that tie, by the way, against the Packers with all those missed field goals, which would have been such a funny moment. But anyway, that Bengals team has been much better than I thought, and it has nothing to do with my thoughts on Joe Burrow, by the way. You guys know I love Joe Burrow, but other aspects of the team have been, I think, better around him. Okay, deep breaths. Long show here. All right, AFC East. I have the Bills finishing at 15-2, which is actually one win better than I had them at 14-3 coming into the year. Patriots finishing 10-7. Their schedule is actually pretty easy, and I think they're getting better as the season goes on. So I think the Patriots can get to 10 wins here. The Dolphins, I have it. Actually, I have the Jets in third place at 5-12. And the Dolphins at 5-12. So, as low as I was on the Dolphins coming into the year, believe it or not, I actually had them at 9-8. And even then, Dolphins fans were very upset about that. But actually, even worse than that at 5-12 here. The Jets at 5-12 as well. Pretty close to the way I predicted this division, just a few less wins for teams like the Patriots and Dolphins, and even the Jets. I think I overreacted to how easy their schedule looked on paper coming into the year for this division, though it is still very easy. Okay, AFC South, I have the Titans finishing at 11-6. I have the Colts at 8-9. I have the Jaguars at 2-15, and I have the Texans at 1-16. So this is almost identical to my preseason predictions. I had the Titans at 10-7 winning this division. I had the Colts at 7-10 coming into the year. I did have the Jags winning 5 games, but even then, Jags fans thought that was too low. And I had the Texans at 1-16 winning their first game of the season against the Jags, so that's looking real good right now. Yeah, I mean, I think Tennessee can still win some games and win this division. They're pretty far ahead at this point. Do I think they're guaranteed to be a better team than the Colts moving forward? Like, just pound for pound, not record included? I don't know. I think those teams are incredibly tight. The Derrick Henry injury sucks for the Titans and definitely knocks them, for me, out of the Super Bowl conversation, which is weird to say about a running back, but I think with the way that team is built stylistically, even in that Colts game, yes, Derrick Henry didn't play well, but they were so committed to stopping him that it opened up some read options for Tannehill, and it opened up the middle of the field for A.J. Brown to go off. Now you're going to see teams be able to back off a little bit, cover the intermediate part of the field, not necessarily be so committal on play action. I think that really hurts this offense. So the division's playing out pretty much as I predicted coming into the year. And then we have the AFC West, where I'm kind of all over the place on this one in the wrong direction. So I had the Chiefs at 14-3 coming into the year, and that was me being low on the Chiefs. Do remember that. I was probably the only person that you will find that ranked them third coming into the year as opposed to first or second. So do consider that. I was critical of their offseason. I was worried about this defense and this offensive line and Patrick Mahomes maybe not being the best quarterback in the NFL. I was one of the few people that did say that. Now all of a sudden I'm like a Chiefs defender. It's just really funny how that works. So I have them moving forward at 11-5. I still think they're a playoff team. I still think their offense is dangerous. I still think some of this stuff will get corrected as they move forward. But as far as, like, are they a Super Bowl team? I have some serious doubts about this team. Now, they're in the much worse conference. But I actually have the Raiders winning this division this year, where I had them at 6-11 coming into the year. I now have them finishing 12-5. So the Raiders being really my worst take. This team has completely fixed the defense, at least, they were the worst defense in the NFL last year, one of them. And now they're one of the best ones. I think by the end of the year, they come in around 10 to 12. And then offensively, Derek Carr has been like a new man. I didn't think with this offensive line he was going to be able to create enough offense to make this look like an explosive offense. And both of those two things couldn't have been further from the truth so far. So the Raiders, I do think, are currently the best team in this division. I'm ready to admit that. I have them finishing 12-5. They've played outstanding football now post John Gruden. Does not seem that Gruden was as important to that team as I once thought from a coaching standpoint. So I have the Raiders winning this division at 12-5. I was wrong there. I have the Chiefs at 11-5. I don't even know if I should say I was wrong about the Chiefs because, again, coming into the year, I was actually lower on the Chiefs than pretty much anybody. And I took a ton of crap for ranking the Packers over them. So I just want to throw that out there. But then I got the Chargers at 10-7. I had them coming into the year at 9-7-1, so they're kind of about what I thought. I thought they'd have some really nice moments and then some questionable moments in there, kind of that pre-hype team like the Cardinals. That was kind of my take coming into the year on the Chargers, was that they're still going to have some pockets on that team to figure out, and that's really kind of played out, I think. And then I have Denver at 6-11, exactly where I had them coming into the year. So kind of all over the place. I think Denver and the Chargers, I was pretty spot on with their prediction coming into the year. Chiefs, I think I was right to be hesitant on ranking them as high as others. The Raiders, completely wrong. So looking back at this thing, I think the Raiders and the Washington football team are my two worst takes. Some teams have been a little better, some teams have been a little worse, but I'm feeling pretty good about my preseason predictions. Not a ton of changes other than the ones we've detailed just now. So the AFC playoff picture, by the way, finishes Buffalo with the 1 seed, the Raiders with the 2 seed, the Ravens with the 3 seed, the Titans get the 4 seed, the Chiefs do end up with the 5 seed, the Chargers get the 6 seed, and the Browns get the 7 seed. Not going to do playoff predictions here. Not a ton has really changed there. If you guys want to go back and check out my playoff predictions from September 6th, the only reason I'm not doing this is because I want to just let those ride, my playoff predictions from September 6th, because I already redo them in January. So I don't want to be redoing my playoff predictions 3 times. You know what I mean? I'm going to redo them in January when I get the playoff picture. But one more little section here before we get into the Patreon mailbag is my award predictions show. So I have not talked about my MVP picks in about a month. So right now, I think the MVP of the NFL is Matthew Stafford. It's tough because this is a very beneficial time for Stafford to come in for this conversation, coming off back-to-back games against the 2 worst teams in football with Detroit and the Houston Texans. The month leading up to that, he had shown some faultiness in the MVP conversation. But right now, dude slinging it around the yard. He fits the narrative, which this, by the way, is who I think wins the award. Not necessarily my pick for it. But right now, I think Matthew Stafford is the front runner, but I don't think it's, a lock or anything. I think this is a really tight race. I look at Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson playing with that explosive mentality that tends to get you into the MVP race. They've been a little bit less consistent, but, I don't even want to say that about Kyler. I think Kyler's right there. He's coming off his worst game of the season, but he is right there. I don't want to say he's played less consistent than Matthew Stafford, because honestly, he's probably been a little bit more consistent. But as far as who is actually slated to win the award right now, I think Stafford has a slight nod. And then Lamar Jackson right there. Now, Lamar is kind of the guy that's carrying the team, or at least he was for a little bit. I think now he's going to put up the statistical production. He already has this narrative that he's carrying this team, which I think now that they've got Marquise Brown playing as good as he is, Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, I don't think he's so much carrying the team, but I think he's going to have a very productive season moving forward, if that makes sense. So those three kind of all have the narrative, the stats, and the explosiveness and fan favoritism to win the award. Then I have two different kind of players that for me are not my version of an MVP, and that's Tom Brady and Dak Prescott. For me, MVP means most valuable player to their team. I think if you put an average quarterback on the Bucs, you put an average quarterback on the Cowboys, they're still pretty good teams. Because they have great offensive lines, great play calling, great receivers, defensive support. It's going to sound like I'm taking away from Brady and Dak because that's just the way fans hear what I just said. But it's true. They're not doing as much for their teams as those other quarterbacks. I do firmly believe that. Doesn't mean they aren't great. Doesn't mean they aren't in the conversation for MVP. And they're not all that far behind these guys. But I just think that a lot of voters do view it that way as well. We've seen that over the years, with the exception of the Matt Ryan year, which I will stand by being one of the worst MVP voting ever, because Julio Jones, if anybody on that Falcons offense, should have been MVP. But anyway, that's my top five for MVP. Matthew Stafford, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady, and Dak Prescott, with Matthew Stafford being the front runner right now. Now I'm just going to do one pick for the rest of these awards. Defensive Player of the Year, no doubt, Myles Garrett right now. I don't think there's a close second. Those that say Trayvon Diggs need to do a little more research. Yes, he has 7 interceptions, right? 6 or 7. Yes, he's been a pleasant surprise for a Cowboys defense that's been a pleasant surprise. He's also like 4th in the NFL in yards allowed. He was the worst player on the field against the Vikings. He was like the only one on that defense that was playing poorly. He's not a good cover corner. He's a very good ball skills, instinctive guy. So I actually think Trayvon Diggs has become the most overrated player in the NFL right now because of those interception numbers. So it's not Trayvon Diggs. I'm sorry. It's Myles Garrett, who is just wrecking game plans. He has surpassed Aaron Donald as the best defensive player in the NFL. It's not even that, voter fatigue, don't vote for Aaron Donald again, even though he's clearly the best player in the NFL, the LeBron James thing. It's not even that. Like, Myles Garrett has actually been more productive and more impactful than Aaron Donald. Like, he's taken the crown, put it on his head, and beaten opposing offensive tackles to death with it. So Myles Garrett's the Defensive Player of the Year. I really don't think it's all that close. And then Offensive Player of the Year, Cooper Kupp. Dude's first in yards, receptions, and touchdowns, right? He's on pace for like 2,000 yards. I don't even know who's close right now. I think Devontae Adams was in that mix, missed a game though due to the COVID thing. Running back wise, unfortunately, Derrick Henry with the injury is not going to win that. I think he probably was the pick. But right now, Cooper Kupp slated for Offensive Player of the Year. He's been ultra impressive. He's like this hybrid. I was trying to think of like, who does Cooper Kupp remind me of? He's like a hybrid of Michael Thomas with the contested catch ability and physicality at that position, and Deebo Samuel with his run after catch ability and ability to separate over the middle of the field. Ultra season from Cooper Kupp. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Jamar Chase speaks for itself. Everybody knows that. He's in the conversation for Offensive Player of the Year. So Offensive Rookie, Jamar Chase. Defensive Rookie, the Cowboys slander stops here. I promise you, Cowboys fans. Micah Parsons is my Defensive Rookie of the Year. He has really just been all over the place, and I think he's brought a mentality shift to that defense on and off the field. And he's just so natural pursuing the ball carrier and bringing guys down. He's instinctive. He can rush the passer. His coverage has been what it was at Penn State, which is not very good. He has a long way to go as a cover linebacker But we've seen that Cowboys run defense kind of reshaped overnight, and I think Micah Parsons is a significant part of that because of his combination of speed, strength, confidence, and instincts. So Micah Parsons is my defensive rookie of the year. And then my comeback player of the year is Dak Prescott. Now, he's got to get healthy, but he has come back and been the best version of himself, and he's in the MVP race. Joe Burrow is right there with him, but Dak's got better numbers, he's got a better storyline. Like, it's Dak's award to lose. It was Dak's award to lose before the season even started. But I promise you, I'm not just hating on the Cowboys because I don't have Dak as my MVP, because I don't have Trayvon Diggs as my defensive player of the year. We still got 2 awards here for the Cowboys. And I've even talked about, for my final award here, Coach of the Year, why Mike McCarthy should be in that conversation. So, not a Cowboys hater, promise you guys. Nothing against the team. I own a shirt. I own a Cowboys shirt. Just saying. But my Coach of the Year is Sean Payton, because he's doing the best coaching job out of anybody in the league. That's what the award should be. He has no play callers. He's lost a quarterback. He just took down the Super Bowl champs. They had one of the more impressively coached games of the entire season out the gate against the Green Bay Packers, where they came out with an unbelievable game plan to stunt that team and Aaron Rodgers. The defense has been phenomenal. Also, like, I know Mickey Loomis is a big part of that, but I think Sean Payton has a lot of say in the personnel. But their offseason is truly, truly remarkable. This team should have fallen apart almost to the bones. They were sitting at negative $96 million in cap space, and they somehow deleted almost all of that deficit while simultaneously extending Ryan Ramczyk and Marshawn Lattimore, adding Kwan Alexander, trading for Bradley Roby, adding a bunch of other free agents. And all they had to do was cut Janoris Jenkins, and is that it? Cut Emmanuel Sanders. Somehow those 2 moves erased $96 million in salary cap deficit. So I know that's not all Sean Payton, but I think some of the personnel moves they made and really good decisions were voiced by Sean Payton. So Coach of the Year, Sean Payton, really undisputedly for me. And there's my awards. So now we are going to wrap up with the Patreon mailbag. Again, guys, if you want to support the show, if you want to become a part of the show, you can do so on patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. Any dollar amount per month subscription gains you access to the mailbag. At the star level tier, you'll get access to my picks every week. And then you will also gain access to the Patreon film room for the MVP level tier, where I want to do a Dak Prescott film breakdown. I think I'm going to do that Patriots game. Not going to probably get that done before I head down to Chicago, but hopefully within the next 7 to 10 days or so, that'll be up. So check out patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy, and thank you to all of my amazing patrons. You guys really make this whole thing go and keep me in check, so thank you. And thanks for the great questions to carry the show a little bit here on the back end. Okay, so our first question here is from Nate. There's definitely a few studs and duds in the commentating atmosphere. If you had to pick 2 or 3 commentators to do the Super Bowl, who you got? So I got 2 different duos that come to my mind that we've never seen that I think would be cool. Ernie Johnson, who does a lot of NBA games for TNT, iconic voice. He's got a great call on the Black Cat on the field for the Giants. Funny, great voice, knows his stuff. So Ernie Johnson paired with Tony Romo, I think would be so good. And then how about we get a Chris Collinsworth, who I think is underrated. I like Chris a lot. And Gus Johnson, who is just electric and keeps you into the game from start to finish. So those are 4 of my favorite in the game. So we're going to pair those guys together for some super commentator duos. From Nicholas Craig, which Bucs receiver do you think will not be on the team next year? I would say Godwin is almost a lock to be gone. Now, salary cap's a myth. Maybe they can make it work, but with him on the franchise tag, with how much they kicked down the road, they need to start saving some of this money for these corners. You know, I think Carlton Davis is up. Sean Murphy-Bunting's up next year. Eventually, Antoine Winfield's going to need to be paid. He doesn't have a fifth-year option. Tristan Wirfs is going to need to be paid. Vita Vea is going to need to be paid. They've already kicked all this money down the road. I think that it's going to be very difficult for them to squeeze a $100 million 4 or 5 year contract in there for Chris Godwin, which I think he's going to want. You know, he did the bring it back deal, but I do think he's going to want to get paid a long-term contract, and I don't know if the Bucs can cash that. Antonio Brown's interesting because he's worth well over $15 a year. If he's willing to take a contract cut or just play for 1 or 2 more years, that could give them a little bit more flexibility. So I would say Godwin very likely out, and Antonio Brown iffy. There's a lot of factors there with Brown: health, age, contract, off-field questions, like a lot of weird stuff with Antonio Brown. But I would say Chris Godwin's going to be very difficult for them to maintain. For Mr. Irrelevant, how many more games does Jalen Hurts play before he gets benched for Minshew? Well, Minshew cut his hair, so he's washed up now. I'm officially off the Gardner Minshew train. I don't know what he's doing. The source of his powers, you can't just cut that off your head. What are you doing, Gardner? So, in all seriousness, Hurts has been good enough to probably see the season out. You might as well. It's not like Minshew's going to turn into the future there, and it's not like they're trying to vie for a playoff spot. So I still like Minshew in all seriousness, but I just don't think it makes a lot of sense for the Eagles to put him in. Unless Hurts becomes a disaster. He hasn't been a disaster. He just probably isn't the future either. It's just a weird spot. But the trade deadline's over by this recording, but I would have loved to see Minshew get on the move again, go somewhere like Washington or somewhere, maybe New Orleans would have been a fun spot for him, but probably not going to happen at this point. From Raging Crocodile, which teams do you think have been the biggest surprises and biggest disappointments? We kind of did that with my midseason review prediction stuff, but I think the biggest disappointments from a global perspective, Miami Dolphins. Now, for those that followed my predictions coming into the year, probably not so much. And the Vikings have been a big disappointment. The Washington football team's been a huge disappointment with that defense just looking so bad. And then the Browns. Offense has been a disappointment. Biggest surprises, the Raiders, Derek Carr and that defense, top of the list for sure. I think the Saints, just as a team, have been such a pleasant surprise. I think the Cardinals' defense before this week was a huge pleasant surprise. And another surprise is how bad the rookie quarterbacks have been. This was deemed one of the best rookie quarterback classes ever. And like Mac Jones has been the best. Fields finally played a good game. Zach Wilson has only had one good game. Lawrence has been up and down. And Trey Lance probably shouldn't have been expected to be good either anyway, but that's been a surprise for me. I thought the rookie quarterbacks were going to be transformative for the season this year, and that has not been true. All right. From Adam, if you're the Colts, even though you got a few wins and are becoming a legit team, do you still try to sit Carson Wentz? This is the big question every Colts fan wants to know, because this is the natural instinct of NFL fans. When you start losing some games, you start thinking about the draft, and the Colts looking ahead like, is Carson Wentz playing the last quarter of the season really worth losing our first-round pick? And my answer is no. I think that team still needs some star talent. Corner, receiver, pass rush. Where do you usually find those? In the first round. So I really think, the Colts schedule lightens up. I think it's worth keeping them in there for another month. See if the Titans fall apart without Henry. See if you beat the Jets. I think they have the Jags next week. They can be 5-5 real quick. So their season's not done. But the second it is, if the math adds up to the point where you take Carson Wentz out and you get your first round pick, I think you owe it to yourself as the Colts to do that. From Jake, everyone and their mom is discussing this currently, and it seems to have a few answers. How would you fix the Chiefs to get them back to how they were the last 2 years? I don't think there's any moves you can make. I think it's Mahomes playing poor, making bad decisions, not playing in structure. So that's a coaching thing, and it's a Mahomes thing. I've talked about some of the defensive stuff, putting Jones back inside. They just got another edge piece. I think take Sorensen out, put Thornhill in, keep Willie Gay in there. The defense can regress back to the mean a little bit, be like the 20th defense. But it's really, at this point, it's coaching decisions. There's no moves that they can go and make to fix this thing. It's going to be on them and the pieces there to figure it out. And I don't think there's anything like schematically that they're doing wrong. It's just execution and like some personnel decisions from who they're starting on defense. But they've exerted all their options as far as what they can do to improve the team's roster. Now it's time to go and execute. From Alex, if you had to play an NFL game, what position am I playing and why? With my lack of skill, I pick running back and hope I'm fast enough. Mine would probably be the one that demands the least amount of athleticism. Honestly, it's probably quarterback, because growing up, like, my arm was always okay. Like, I'm not an athlete. That's why I'm sitting here on a gaming chair talking about football for a living and not out on the field. But growing up, my best trait was always my arm. I was a pretty good pitcher in baseball. I wasn't athletic enough to be a quarterback when I was in high school, but I feel like with the way I see the game and the arm actually kind of being my best trait, that's probably what I would play. I could maybe complete a few passes, a couple swing pass, maybe an RPO here or there. But anything 15-plus yards, probably not going to look too pretty. But I just feel like I'm not athletic enough to get put anywhere else. Maybe tight end. I could be okay, 6'3", 250. There's no way I could get after the quarterback and play defense, but maybe tight end, my hands are good enough. I said quarterback or tight end would be where you try your best with me. I'm pretty competitive. I'm pretty feisty. I was an offensive lineman in high school, so I can block a little bit. So tight end or quarterback, probably. From REA Beats, why is A-Rod the GOAT, and who are the runner-ups? I still don't see it. Josh Allen is more athletic. Brady is smarter. There are a ton of better runners and more accomplished QBs. By what metric is he the best ever? Well, I joke about it, but I don't necessarily think Rodgers is the GOAT. I think he's the best quarterback to ever play. I don't know who my best answer is for the GOAT or what that definition actually means, but if you want a case for why Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback of all time, there's guys in the league right now that are more gifted, right? Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, a little faster. I think Allen has a stronger arm. I still actually think Rodgers in his prime had a tiny bit more arm talent than Mahomes, but it's pretty damn close. But the difference is, and we're seeing it really with Mahomes now, we've seen it with Josh Allen throughout his career. Yes, Brady is smarter than Rodgers, but Rodgers ain't that far behind. And he has been a surgeon throughout his career. So he's like this hybrid of Mahomes and Brady. You might not get the far end processing from Brady, and you might not get you did. You did get the play extension back in his prime. I mean, Rodgers 2011 to 2016, in my opinion, no quarterback has ever topped peak Rodgers. And then last year he was close-ish, but that's the way I see it with Rodgers, is on the field from a player evaluation standpoint, he is perfection at the quarterback position. He can get through his reads. He doesn't make mistakes. He extends plays. He's one of the most accurate quarterbacks ever. Arm talent, elite, pocket presence, the best ever, in my opinion. I don't think anybody has ever had the ability to manipulate pockets, know when and how to extend plays. It's literally like he has a pair of eyeballs in the back of his head. God mode with that. Just frustrating defenders for years with his ability to know where the rush is coming and where to step in. So just like traits-based analysis, Rodgers is at his prime, which was 2011 to 2016, the best, most high-level quarterback play we've ever seen. He also did it without a ton of support. Well, early in his career, he had great receivers and all that stuff, but we've also seen him without a great surrounding cast play at an MVP level. We haven't really seen that from other quarterbacks. We've seen with Brady, when his cast isn't there, he's still very good, but he's not like carrying teams deep into playoffs. Brady's always either had the defensive support or great receivers around him. And then with Mahomes, I've been on the record saying that what we've seen from Mahomes is the best quarterback we've ever seen. But now over this season, it's like, well, he's got flaws that were never there from Rodgers. Rodgers never had all these boneheaded mistakes. You got the highs of the play extension, the wow throws, methodical quarterback play without 3 turnover-worthy plays a game. So just from a film-based analysis of the position, Rodgers is the most difficult quarterback to defend, the quarterback that I think most coaches in the league would take in their prime in a vacuum. But you can also dig into the stats, and it's very well supported. If it were not for his own defense allowing, who was it? Hang on. If you go to all-time, so he's the all-time leader in quarterback rating alone. But if you go to all-time playoff QB rating, is it Matt? Kurt Warner. So if you take like minimum, I think like 15 or 10 starts in the playoffs, the number one all-time playoff quarterback rating, which isn't a perfect stat, but I'm just using a statistical argument for Rodgers. Kurt Warner is number one. And if it weren't for... Is that what it is? I know that someone pointed this out to me. But yeah, 2009... Yeah, it would have been 2009 Kurt Warner's Cardinals scored 54 points against the Packers. If that Packers defense didn't exist... or was just average, then Rodgers is number one in all-time quarterback rating for playoffs. He's also PFF's highest graded playoff quarterback ever with like a minimum of 10 or 15 starts or something like that. The numbers support Rodgers statistically and from a film-based perspective. So that's my argument. The last argument for like the accomplishment thing, let me just pull up the Packers playoff losses, and let me just read something off to you here. So the Green Bay Packers playoff losses. So 2010, defense gives up 51 points. They lose. The next year, they have a top 10 defense. He wins the Super Bowl. The next year, they lose, giving up 37 points. The year after that, they lose giving up 45 points. The year after that, they actually were really close. The defense was pretty good. 2014 against the Niners, they barely lost. Rodgers led a great comeback, but then never saw the ball as the defense gave up a game-winning drive to Colin Kaepernick. Year after that, they're in the Super Bowl. All they got to do is HaHa Clinton-Dix bats at a 2-point conversion rate in front of his face, or Brandon Bostic catches a onside kick, and they're in the Super Bowl. But one of the great all-time playoff collapses of all time. The year after that, team depleted by injuries at Arizona, 7-point underdogs. Rodgers plays outstanding, throwing to receivers you've never heard about, Jared Abbrederis, Jeff Janis, throws the Hail Mary at the end. Game goes to overtime, loses the coin toss, never sees the ball again, which, by the way, happened in Seattle after Rodgers had a 40-yard drive to set up a game-tying field goal to send it into overtime, by the way. No one ever mentions that, against the Legion of Boom in Seattle on a broken ankle. 2017, defense gives up 44 points. 2020, defense gives up 37 points. And then last year, defense gives up 31 points. I mean, it's a team sport, guys. So probably spent a little bit more time on that than I needed to, but there's the argument. You can take it or leave it. Let's move on. From Luke, I know you're not a stats guy, but do you think that advanced metrics like EPR per play and completion percentage over expected can be good supplements to film analysis for quarterbacks? They're good. They're good metrics. I'll just say that. I think you always need to balance both film and analytics. But yes, if you're going to use analytics, I think those are good ones to use. They're not perfect. No analytic is perfect, and a lot of analytics do have an added layer of subjectivity because of the way they come up with these things, because they are derived from the film. So they're certainly not perfect, but they're certainly good tools to use. From Edward Green, is Justin Herbert good enough to carry the Chargers to the AFC Championship game? I don't think so yet. I don't think he's versatile enough quite yet with the different ways he can beat you. He's incredibly talented. He's really good. I would say he's kind of in that Matthew Stafford territory, which has never been an elite guy that can carry a team. Now, if the Chargers step up in other ways, Chargers can get to the AFC Championship. But I don't know if Herbert's there yet. Which he doesn't need to be. He's a year 2 player. From Jack Brown, do you see the Bucs letting Chris Godwin walk this offseason? Do they pay AB over Godwin? Neither. We just hit on that, so we're good there. From Matt, how hot are Joe Judge and Jason Garrett's seats? Monday Night Football is rough to watch. Excuse me. I think they're back. I think Joe Judge is back, and I think the Giants would be really smart to roll the dice on a different coordinator next year. It's tough because they have been derailed by injuries. Joe Judge was decent as a rookie coach. I really think Joe Judge is back just based on the way that organization typically operates. I don't think that's necessarily smart, but yeah, I don't think either of them are doing great jobs. But in reality, does Joe Judge get fired? I don't think so. Jason Garrett's got a pretty decent chance. But I don't know if I'd necessarily blame Jason Garrett either. I don't think he's done a noticeably crappy job. He hasn't been good. But they have no O-line and all their receivers are hurt and Daniel Jones is your quarterback. How much are you expecting? I think Gettleman might be the piece that you look at and question. Whose fault it truly is this year. Connor Lee, mind going through the Cowboys' schedule, predict their record. A lot of people wondering about record predictions moving forward, so it seems like it was a good week to do that. From Otter, how has Sean Payton been able to be an elite coach for so long? been watching him since I was a kid. I mean, he just is. He just knows so many different ways to beat you. So good at like understanding what opposing defenses are trying to do to you, what the weak spots are in those defenses, knowing when those defenses are going to be called so that he can dial up the right play call against that. He's a great just coach, like, of the game of football. He elevates players. He gets guys to block their asses off, play tough. He is awesome at identifying weird, random skill sets that he can deploy in certain ways. It started back with Drew Brees and Marcus Colston. It's evolved to Taysom Hill and Deontay Harris and all these different random pieces. They've got a Jawan Johnson playing this year as a converted receiver at tight end. He's a step ahead. He's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers type of coach. So yeah, he is outstanding. Elite. From Colatron, if you had to make one move for the Giants right now, what would it be? I'd trade Daniel Jones. I would trade Daniel Jones to the Saints or somebody that wants him. He's been good. I think this is a sell-high opportunity for the Giants. They're not going to save their season this year, but you could then you could probably get a late first for Daniel Jones. Maybe an early second. I just think, even if he's been okay, and I'm not even saying it's his fault, but I just think with the window they're in, if I'm in charge, I'm cleaning house. And that includes letting someone else take a crack at Daniel Jones and then paying Daniel Jones. Because I think paying Daniel Jones is, cashing your ticket to purgatory for the next 5 to 6 years. And that's not a ticket I want to cash. So if I could make any move, I'm going to trade Daniel Jones, get something for him, and move on. While you can, while he's officially bookmarked as a purgatory quarterback. All right, last question from Matthew Ramble. Is Bobby Wagner a Hall of Famer if he retired today? Yes, 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 and yes. I think the number one thing for the Hall of Fame question is, the first thing I like to ask is, were they ever the best player at their position? If the answer to that is yes, they have a case for the Hall of Fame. Now, there's certain things you can do with longevity and rings and stuff that might elevate you, but like at the core, for me, a Hall of Fame player is at some point in your career, you were the best at your position. And then if you can do that for multiple seasons, lock it in. And Bobby Wagner has had, 4 or 5 seasons of at least the best, or right there with Luke Kuechly, who's also a Hall of Fame talent who just happened to retire early. So yes, Bobby Wagner is a Hall of Famer. He also was a critical piece of one of the greatest defenses of all time. And he's a an evolutionary player. He's one of these first kind of super athletes at the linebacker position in the modern NFL who could play downhill, but also get back and cover like a strong safety. So yes, Bobby Wagner, lock Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Great question to end on, Matt. All right. That is the show, pushing just about 2 hours here, so I really appreciate you guys for watching. Looking forward to a little bit of time off. You'll be able to catch my picks video up here on YouTube on Thursday, maybe even Wednesday evening, depending on when this podcast gets posted. And then also make sure you guys check out TFG Plays, hoping to upload a couple more Bengals Rebuild episodes while I'm out of town. So that series has been going great. And leave a review, hit that like button on the podcast. Thank you again for watching. Really appreciate you guys or listening. And enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy week 9. We'll see you next week. Peace out.